leadership is a skill to be nurtured and be developed. I think a lot of times we think people are just natural born leaders. You think Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, everybody that gets all the, big name accolades. But at the end of the day, I think the really good leaders are the ones that sometimes you never hear about because they're leading through other people. And that's the definition of a leader.
Because it really aligns a lot with great teams, right? Everybody just working together versus working on their own. And
Unfinished Business Podcast Show with your host, David Sliman.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Unfinished Business Podcast Show. And as always, we have the most inspiring guests on this show who are true entrepreneurs. And this guy today is absolutely just that. He's an inspiring guest that you're going to want to listen to, whose career spans in the world of insurance and now in the world of technology. Elliot Bassett is the president and partner of Ellerbrock-Norris, a company with over a century of history in the insurance business. And he's also the co-founder of a cutting-edge platform called Launch, which we're going to dig into as well. Listen, if you think you're busy, this guy's busy. He's doing multiple things here on top of having a podcast show called Getting Past the Premium, where he really specializes in encouraging fellow advisors on tips, strategies, just beyond in the insurance world, but also beyond that. And I was actually lucky enough and honored to be a guest on that show. And we're going to do a part 2, but it was really fun. So we're going to hear about Elliot's journey, starting as a newcomer in the insurance business, working his way up the ranks, and ultimately now becoming the leader of that organization, and then creating a technology company as well. So in our conversation today, I am really, really pumped up to jump into this and hear about his approaches and really appreciate his willingness to share and be on this show today. So Elliot, thanks for being here.
Yeah, David, I'm excited. Our first conversation on Getting Past the Premium was a blast. And so I'm looking forward to round 2 of that, and then excited for this conversation. So
yeah, you made it easy, man. It was a great show, and we covered a lot. So listen, take us back, all right, to the beginning of your career and what led you into the insurance field, and just getting into the industry and really being a newcomer and shooting up above the ranks pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. I jumped into the industry and into Ellerbrock-Norris, which is our firm, right out of college. So 2010, graduated on a Saturday, started on a Monday. And there's some family ties. The history, as you mentioned, of the company goes back to 1906. So it wasn't always a family run or owned organization. But my dad became principal owner in the 90s. And, we have my cousin Andy is the CEO. I'm president. And then my younger brother Chase is in the sales team for us. And then we have 5 other partners in the firm as well. And so I started in 2010 just as a producer, insurance salesperson. Get your license and here's a phone book and go sell. Essentially, we didn't have much of a process around any sort of sales process, any sort of coaching. It was kind of just a mentorship model and go cut your teeth, getting opportunities. And so that was in 2010, and we've kind of slowly grown the company since then until about 2015 when we shifted our model, which we can get into, and really took off from a growth perspective from there. So
yeah, I want to go back to those early days, man, of just grinding it out, right? Because we talked about this on your show. I talk about this a lot, but you have to work harder in order to earn the right to work smarter. And what were some of those pivotal moments or decisions that really helped you grow as a leader in this business? I want to stick to the sales side, right? Because I know you and I talked a lot about sales on your show, but let's stick in the sales moment. What makes a great sales professional? And, specifically in the insurance business, but just in general, what were some of those things that helped you grow?
Yeah, well, my answer to this is probably definitely evolved over time. But early days, it was all about reps. It was just a numbers game. Get the enough. Even if you're not that good, if you get enough opportunities, you can sell enough business to stay alive, essentially. And so it was high rep. A lot of cold calls, a lot of knocking on doors. But I do think that creates kind of a foundational element to a salesperson where if you can get good at that, no matter what happens, you always have something to fall back on because you
Yeah.
can always go back and cold call or always go back and knock on doors. Is it the best way to get opportunities? I don't know. We still do a lot of it here, but there's other ways. Certainly, as social media has opened up the ball game to get opportunities, but I think that creates the foundation. And so I think what makes a good salesperson is number one, that willingness, that grind to take object or rejection and be able to go on to the next one. But that's kind of foundational. I think what really makes the top end salesperson is those that align themselves with their prospect and align what they're doing with their prospect's goals to get where they're going. I think if you can do that, sales becomes easy. It's not a
Yeah.
4-letter word at that point. It's really about helping people achieve their goals and aligning your product to whatever you're selling to that company's goals.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. And there's a few things I want to touch on here because you said this in the beginning, and I always say this too. If you're new to sales or you're thinking about getting into sales, you're probably not going to have a lot of skills. Okay. And you're probably not going to have a lot of knowledge of the industry. You have to learn that. And that's where the work ethic comes in. But you talked about this. If you're working, if your motion is moving, you're going to stumble on a few deals, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you're going to get things going to at least. I know my first sale, I didn't sell anything. I didn't close anything. I didn't create the sale. I just stumbled on a deal because I was out making motion. But I
Yeah.
think that's important. And then, like you said, as you build confidence, once you build that foundation, you can always go back to it. But there's other ways, and that will help you build more confidence. But great perspective on that.
Yeah. You got to get the reps, and then you just continue to get better. Each call, you learn a little bit, you get enough no's and you start to tweak your messaging and, start to hone in on what am I listening for? And you just continuously get better. But if you're not doing the reps, you don't have enough input data to make you better. You don't have enough practice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
important just to put your head down and get the reps.
This is great. So I obviously your company's been around for a while. Like you said, you've transitioned into the president role. How did you transition over time here? Obviously, on top of just producing sales, you have to have other abilities to understand how to run an organization or come up with fresh ideas. How did you balance that in growing this and moving into a leadership role and growing the organization? Because sometimes companies can be around for a long time and they'll have approaches that have been around for a long time, and you have to evolve. So, I mean, how did you do that with such a long-standing organization?
Yeah, it hasn't been easy necessarily. I mean, there's a lot of things that are built into the DNA over time that, when we want to chart a new course, we have to overcome or show people why we might want to do something different. But something I've certainly learned is that leadership is a skill to be nurtured and to be developed. I think a lot of times we think people are just natural born leaders. You think Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, everybody that gets all the, big name accolades. But at the end of the day, I think the really good leaders are the ones that sometimes you never hear about because they're leading through other people. I mean, that's the definition of a leader. And so it's a skill set that you do have to learn. And it's something I've learned this just even recently in the last couple of years that it's really something you have to work on. No different than you have to get the reps in selling and improve your skill and craft there. It's the same thing. But we just realized that we had producers, salespeople that were all running kind of in their own direction. And we really weren't running in the same direction as an organization. And I think that was the catalyst to say, we've got to have somebody that is a team that's on that executive level that's really thinking about the future, where we're going, the strategy of how we're going to get there as an organization, not as individuals. So we would call it building a business, not books of business. And so that's really where the impetus started, and just understanding that kind of changed our mindset on a lot of things. It shifted us to really just understanding how can we lay the foundation to scale a business to the next level versus just our own book of business.
It's so great what you just said. And if anyone out there is running a sales organization or a business, sales driven type business, I want you to play that back and listen to that, because it really aligns a lot with great teams, right? Everybody just working together versus working on their own. I just listen back to that of what Elliot says. I think it was fantastic and well put. And again, that comes through experience. Now, Elliot, looking back, can you share maybe a lesson? Because I know you said it's tough. It is. It's a process, right? But is there a lesson you learned maybe the hard way, where maybe a mistake or a setback in your entrepreneurial journey happened, and then it ended up as a teaching moment or something really important that you were able to carry on?
Yeah, and may not be a specific moment, but I think one of the things that I look back on that certainly we could have done better and we've learned from is communication in general with
Mm-hmm.
your team, with your direct reports, because we could see the vision. We knew where we wanted to go. We thought we had communicated it, but you don't realize that most people need to hear something multiple times in different ways. It needs to be reinforced. And again, you think you get in a meeting and you tell them, all right, here's where we're going to go next, and everybody's like, sure, great, but then they go back to their role and they forget. And
Yeah.
so I think we learned that probably the hard way, where it slowed us down quite a bit, where again we thought we had been clear about what we were doing and communicated it, but we weren't making the progress that we wanted, because at the end of the day, it just takes really good and reinforced conversations that are going to communication that's going to take that and reinforce it with your team. And so that's just kind of a learning lesson over time. It's not about a specific moment in time, but something that we've recognized we've had to get a lot better at.
What steps, give me maybe one example of one thing that you've done to improve the communication, because this is not a trend that is, how do I say it, uncommon, right?
Yep.
But maybe some words of advice or one or two little advice tips that you did to help improve the communication in your organization, because I call it organizational alignment when I go and look at organization top to bottom. But are there any things that you could share that you did that really made an impact?
Yeah, I think realizing that the why matters more than the what in a lot of cases. If you can explain to your team, especially if you have talented people on your team, why you want to get where you want to get, it's less about how and what they do if they get you to that result, right? And if they understand, like, this is why we're trying to do this, you'll get much more buy-in. You'll probably find different ways to do it. But we definitely went more of the what and the how first, and learned that we've got to bring people along with why are we doing this and why is it important. And that's probably the biggest thing that I could encourage anybody, is spend more time on that part than you think you need to.
That's great. We need to clip that, run that back. I mean, there's so much good stuff you're giving here, man. So good.
Yeah,
Run that back,
stuff
clip
we've
it,
learned.
but
I'm not
write it
saying it's
down.
right.
Yeah. I mean, it's how you learn. In your view today, right? Because the role of an insurance professional, I'm sure, has changed over the years since you first started. But what makes a great insurance professional today? Habits, qualities, anything that you can think of that you want to share that really sets a person who's good from being great?
Yeah. I mean, it 100% comes down. I think it's a big separation between those that are just selling a product and those that are truly going in to understand their clients and sit in a coaching seat or whatever you want to call it with their client to understand how do these products help them in their business and get to their next level, protect whatever they need to protect, versus just, again, selling a product that they've always bought, that they have to buy because of whatever, and trying to sell it cheaper or whatever. It's really those that are out there absolutely doing really cool things, absolutely crushing it, are those that are in that latter field of really understanding their clients and really helping their clients understand the products, why they buy it, and how it can help them get to the next level. Because that's what business owners want. They want somebody that's on their team.
Yeah, we talked about it on your show, and it's really identifying their challenges and speaking their language, right? Like
Yep.
just knowing based on some of those answers they give you that you can help and putting them in the right policies. And I was telling you from my end, my insurance agent, we did a whole deep dive. I learned more this last year than I've known in 25 years on my insurance. So,
Yeah.
but it's good to do that. It's something I wish I would have done earlier. And it gave me clarity on why he did things certain ways. And because honestly, I was going to switch insurance companies. And we talked more. I paid a little bit more to stay with him, but I felt more comfortable on his intentions and why he was doing the way he was doing.
Yeah.
And that's great. All right,
Well, I think,
yeah, go ahead, please
well,
add
I
to
was
it.
going to say, I think this applies across any sales in any industry. Is
Yes.
sometimes we make the assumption that because the client has bought something in the past, that they're educated, that they knew what they bought, that they want the same exact thing, but they want it cheaper. Like we assume that we know why they're buying what they're buying and what their pain points are, when in reality, everybody's different, and we need to ask, and we need to have a discovery process, and we need to really dive into their business and understand that they might be more comfortable paying more money if we're able to get them this or make them comfortable about that. But just assuming that they want to pay less money is not always a good strategy.
Yeah.
I think that applies across selling in any industry.
Yeah, we're so aligned on that. And you talked about the discovery process. And one of the questions I always love to ask in a discovery process, whether they've, if they've used a product in the past, or obviously everybody's had insurance. Well, most people have
Yeah.
had insurance in the past, you would hope. But how did your product match up, or the service that you got involved with really match up with your expectations? I always like to ask that question. And then also, what do you think, if they don't give me this answer, I'm going to say, what do you think could have been improved upon?
Yep.
Like, what would you, because then that set expectations for you moving forward to understand what's important to that prospect or that client. And you can really put pressure on that and build more value for yourself as a sales professional.
Exactly. I couldn't
Yeah,
agree more.
it's great. Yeah, that's great. All right. So now let's move to the tech side. All
Yeah.
right. You're also the co-founder of Launch. And what inspired you to develop Launch, and what problems were you trying to solve for the insurance professionals with this tool?
Well, really, we were trying to solve our own problem first,
Okay.
which, as I've mentioned, it's we have developed a pretty in-depth sales process that is different than a lot of the industry operates, and there just wasn't a great way for us to implement this assessment-based, discovery-based process that we wanted to develop or implement with technology. And so we had tried several different pieces of tech and piece things together, and finally just decided we needed to build something custom. And so built it originally internally, and then through some industry trade groups and things that we're in, really got some outside interest in what we were doing, and realized that we could make a big impact, not only from a business perspective for us, but on the industry of making this shift away from selling transactionally, selling products, to selling in more of this advisor capacity, looking at risk more holistically, so on and so forth. And so
Yeah.
rolled it out as a separate company and took it to market after that. That's what we're doing.
That, what has the journey been like for you, building software, startup, simultaneously running an insurance business? You and I have run down that same path. I have not run down that path. Well, maybe I did run down. I did for about 2 or 3 years of developing software. It's one thing to grab an outside the box software, or a
Mhm.
box software, but it's another thing to develop one. And tell me about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it was very eye opening on how the whole thing
Uh-huh.
works. It's a completely different business model, a completely different sales process. Everything that goes into not only a startup but just the software and technology startup is completely different. So it's just having to learn how do we get clients? What's the sales process look like? How do we handle support questions? It's all of those things that go into starting a new business that we've had to know and understand. But as it's specific to technology, it it's a bigger lift than you probably think it is. But if you do it right, it's not as complex, if that makes sense. So like in your
Okay.
mind, you're like,
Yeah.
I want to build my own tech. It seems like, how would I ever do that? And so we had outsourced the initial build of it and,
Hmm.
got it to where we wanted to, and we were using it just the way it was and seeing a ton of value out of it. And now we've
Great.
since hired a developer and, we brought that in house, but you could, especially nowadays with AI and things like that, I mean, you could do the same thing much more quickly and get it off the ground.
So you said that your sales process is a little bit different. I want to unpack this a little bit more. Sorry to bounce around a little bit, but
Yeah.
I catch some of the things you say here. And when did you really identify that your sales process was different, or you created it? And then, what is it that you do that really is different? Obviously, outside of that you identified before you started developing the software, because obviously you rolled that into the software. But are there a few things that you really identified that were game changing for your sales type industry?
Specific to the tech side?
Yeah,
Or
specific to the tech side.
yeah. So okay, so the general steps, in my opinion, of the sales process, no matter what you're selling, apply. It's just how do you implement those different steps. So if you've got your intro, you've got your initial call, whatever you want to call that, then you've got
Yeah.
discovery, and then you've got presentation, and those can be broken up into smaller steps if you want. But generally, that's what you have to do. Um, what we've learned on the tech side is, people want to see the product, they want to demo it, they want to understand how it can work versus have us do. We still need to do discovery, but we've got to do it in a different way than we otherwise would, say on our insurance and risk management side, where we're going really in depth before we ever show the client anything. And so we've had to kind of play around with, when do we show the demo, because we want to get enough information discovery from them beforehand so that we can tweak the demo to what's going to make sense to them, but we can't go too far into discovery because
Right.
they just shut down and they're like, just show me the product already. And so it's just all those little things that kind of you got to tweak and change and try new things.
Read the room, man.
Yeah.
Read the room. Yep.
But I think it's important to say the same steps, the same process applies no matter what you're selling.
It truly does. I agree with you. I mean, you've got to get that understanding in the process. You really do. So, I think about so many things I want to ask, and especially on the development side, right? Because you want to encourage growth and innovation within your team. You want to keep the needle moving. You want to try and test different things. But how do you help your younger insurance professionals or new professionals or entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs, so to speak, in the space, organize them and succeed? What are some of the things that you do to help them really get off the runway?
Yeah, so this is something we've put a ton of thought into and are testing different things, but and this might be long-winded, but we basically looked at an insurance producer when you come in and you're green to the industry. You've never sold anything really. You don't know what insurance is. As I mentioned, when I started, it was like, here's a phone book, here's some things to try and go figure it out, right?
Yeah.
But you're trying to learn what we figured out is about 3 basic skills. You're trying to figure out, how do I get opportunities? How do I get leads?
Okay.
How do I sell the lead? How do I close it? And then I have to service a certain number of those too that I sell, right? I have clients, I have a book of business that I have support staff, but I'm still maintaining the relationship, all of that. And those are 3 very different skill sets that you've got to learn. And most firms in our industry just make you learn them all at once because you're trying to sell and then do all the things. And so we decided we were going to break those roles out. And we have what we call a business development role. This is where if you're new to the industry, you haven't really sold anything, or maybe you have sold in the past, but you don't know what insurance is. That's where you're going to come in and you're going to cut your teeth doing that, which is figure out how to get leads. That's the skill set, as I mentioned, that if you're good at it, you can always rely on it, and you can always use that to grow your book of business down the road. So you're going to focus there. Once you've grown enough leads, once you figured that out, you're going to go into the how do you close, and you're going to sit in that seat for a bit. We call that a strategist. And then at that point, you kind of figure out, do I want it? Because we have strategists that's their full-time role, is closing and maintaining a high-level relationship with the client. So you could kind of continue down that path to learn and be an expert there. or you can figure out one of what we call our subject matter expertise, which is our different divisions of the company, where you can become, an expert in insurance, benefits, whatever it be that you have an interest in, and you kind of career path into that. And then that role still has a business development and arm, but it's usually you've cultivated a book of business, you're getting more referrals. You still need to know how to sell, you still need to know how to close, but it's less, dialing for numbers and whatnot. So that's kind of how we've done it.
So do you actually transfer the client to a strategist? I want to get some clarity on this. Or do you really teach the new professionals, hey, it's all about getting leads right now. Once you get a lead, we're going to have a strategist come in and work with you. And then if something bigger comes out, we're going to put you with an expert. Or is it, how do you manage that?
Yep. Okay. So business development rep gets the opportunity. They have an initial call. We call it an intro executive briefing. Basically a pre-qualification call.
Yes.
Are they the decision maker? Do they fit our target market? Do we think we have opportunity to help them, et cetera? And then if that meeting goes well and they qualify, for what we're looking for, then we set what we call a full executive briefing, where we bring in the strategist. They have to have the decision maker in that meeting, though.
Gotcha.
So they might be working that lead a little bit until they get the decision maker. But then at that point, you're bringing in the strategist. They're running it from there on. So that's your intro to kind of your point of contact for the client moving forward. And then once we determine where are we going to help this client, it might be insurance. We sometimes don't know at that point. We're just intrigued by our model. And if it's something specific, we'll bring in that subject matter expert. So an insurance subject matter expert or a benefits to kind of be the technical piece of the rest of that sales process. But they work with the strategist in conjunction to take it to the finish line.
Fantastic, man. What teamwork, right? And I'm sure there's a piece for everybody in this, right? Because they're putting time into it.
Oh yeah.
But wow. And then as the new person sees these things going on, they can start understanding where they gravitate, where their specialty might be, whether it's the expert or the strategist, but all across the board. Like the process, man. That's great.
Yeah.
Great process.
It's been a work in progress and we're continually tweaking it, but we think it could be a great way to bring new folks into the industry, make them more successful. I mean, I think that the dropout rate of insurance producers in our industry is like 75%. And so because of a lot of those issues. And I think we can do better than that, and get people the training they need, but it's got to be at the right cadence, the right sequence. And then also the big thing in our industry is validation. So like you've built a big enough book of business that you're essentially paying for yourself to the firm. And our thought is if they're just focusing on getting those leads, they can build a book of business pretty quick because they're not trying to learn everything else. And we have experts doing the rest of it. They can close at a higher rate. And so we'll tag those that they bring in. And if they get to a certain point and then they become that expert in that area, we'll start to transition those back into their book. And now all of a sudden they're paying for themselves really quickly. And so that's an interesting model as well to kind of get them off the ground.
Love the model, man. Love the model. Again, everybody, if you're listening to this, I really want to make an impression about this. With Elliot and what he's explaining here is not something that happened overnight. Okay. How long has it taken you to cultivate this process that you're at today? I mean, since you've been in?
Pretty distinctly, I would say we started down this process of kind of transitioning the company that I mentioned earlier and things in 2015, 2016. So it's been a 10-year process. And granted, we were stumbling around in the dark at the start, and really the last few years, I think is when we've made a lot of the progress that we needed.
It's great, man. I do want to come back to technology. And again, I bounce a little bit here, but we always got to use these two letters, AI. All right. How do you see AI tools and other software changing the game of insurance agencies or even sales professionals as a whole, if you want to answer that? But, while especially in insurance business, right? Like in any sales business, you want to keep that personal touch, but you also want to maximize the results using tools. How do you see that balance?
Yeah, I think it's important, at least the way that we look at it today. Who knows where it'll be in 5 or 10 years, but I think it's important that we realize the that we need a human in the loop, at least right now. And in our business, I think there's a lot of things that AI is going to replace. Right now, some people sell based on, I can come in and do a coverage analysis, review your policies for your business better than David can, right?
Yeah.
Well, AI is going to be able to do that for everybody in 3 seconds at some point and tell you, here's the gaps in your policies and whatever. But where I think it's important is when somebody has something happen in their life that they're concerned about, they have the claim, they have, they're not sure how they should approach cyber liability. They're probably not going to go to a chatbot. They want to talk to somebody, right? And I think that's important, but we're putting a big emphasis on relationship and client experience and things that an AI can't really replicate. Let's let AI do what it's good at and do all the process and the stuff to make us more efficient. And let's use it for all of that. Let's not be scared of it. But then let's lean into the human being element that we are and spending the time with our clients and the relationship building. So we're not having to do that back end process. I think that's going to be the differentiator, is those that use it to take work off of their plate so that they can invest in a client relationship.
Yeah. I'm 100% aligned with you, brother, on that one for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I'd say that a close second there that I is just sheer information, analyzing information. And so we do our selling through assessments, right? So we want to go in and we want to ask the right questions consistently to get the information that we want. And even an experienced person, if you go through that, you can usually pick out the top 1 or 2 issues that the client has that you're going to go present on. But you tend to focus on those. And so you miss 3, 4, and 5 that are also really important and that only bolster your presentation. Well, AI captures everything. And so, we actually have it in our launch product now where it analyzes the answers to these questions and gives us back a report based on how they answered the questions, and helps us just think through, what are these other things that we need to be considering. And so I think that's a big piece too.
Yeah. And the one thing I also say about AI, especially for the newer folks in sales or newer professionals, listen, you've got to understand the fundamentals first. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
AI and doing all this great stuff and saving time and all that is great. I agree. And I'm 100% aligned with you, but don't underestimate going through the fundamentals and understanding the motions that are going to get you to where you need to be. Because if you don't understand those, you're not even going to be able to maximize AI as you go along. So I'm all for shortcuts, but not too many shortcuts, especially if you're newer to sales or newer to the insurance industry or any sales industry whatsoever. But I think that's a good point. All right. So what's that?
You can get yourself in some trouble.
Yeah. Right.
Too much before you understand what you're doing. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. It spits out information, but you got to understand it. Okay. Like I said, this guy's busy. I mean, in addition to his day job, running an organization, running a tech company, he's the co-host of a podcast called Getting Past the Premium. And like I said, I was lucky enough to be on that show. We're actually going to do a second episode to continue the first one. But why did you decide to start the podcast? And we're going to push people your way to check it out as well. And how has having those conversations influenced the industry, business, clients, maybe the whole thing?
Yeah, totally. Well, it kind of goes back to our broader why we've done a lot of the things we've done, where we saw in our industry, again, we felt like this transactional product-based selling model wasn't always the best for the client. And so we had made this shift internally. We were seeing success. We wanted to be able to get that message out to more people, to ultimately be able to provide a better advice across the industry to the clients that need it, right? The small businesses that, wearing a lot of hats, that need somebody that's going to help them think through these things. And so that was part of the reason why we rolled Launch out as a separate company. We didn't go get a bunch of VC funding and all that to blow it up. It's, we're taking it out slow and steady. And those that really believe in that model are going to find a lot of use for it. And then same thing with Getting Past the Premium. We thought, let's start the conversation with different people in the industry about what's working, what's not, to transition towards more of this type of model. So we hit a lot of different topics, from sales process to tech to leadership to all the things that go into running a business in this manner. But really, and it applies to anybody in sales. Again, it's going from that transactional selling on price to advisory, discovery, helping your clients achieve their goals. And so that's the fundamental piece of it.
Yeah, he's a great host too. So check it out. We'll put it up here for sure.
Appreciate it.
You made it easy on me, man. You really made it easy on me.
Round two will be fun too.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, a couple more questions here before I let you go. But I always like to ask this from successful entrepreneurs, and I really have been thinking about this question because I know and believe it's going to be business related, but not really. When someone's as busy as you are and been there, what habits or routines help you stay on top of your game personally? I think you have kids too, right? I think we talked about that. Yeah.
Girls,
So daily habits, practices, learning habits, anything out there, what keeps you on top of your game?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of things. I think that one thing I've tried to do is always focus and have a certain amount of time and energy devoted to personal development. I'm a big believer in your business will only rise to the level of your ability. I call it a growth ceiling. A lot of folks do, and so you've got to continue to get better if your business is ever going to grow past you, or it can never grow past you if your business is ever going to grow. And so every morning I usually start with reading, or
Right.
something to really get the mind going. But then it's all about calendar management, time management. You have to be able to say no. I've learned big time. That's probably one of the biggest habits, is being able to prioritize and say no when things aren't going to be valuable. And then I have project blocks as well. So I have times that are just open space in the calendar where I can slot in my own projects of things I need to work on. And those are non-negotiable. Meetings cannot get scheduled. And I usually do that in the morning. And then I stole this from Alex Hormozy, but schedule the rest of your days back to front. So schedule end of the day a meeting, end of the day and towards the front of the day, so that you ideally, some doesn't always work, but you don't want 30-minute, open time. You can't really get much done in 30 minutes. You either want 10 to 15 to prep for your next meeting, or you want an hour. So little things that, we've kind of worked on calendar management. And then one of the best things that we did was hiring an executive assistant that helps me do all of this. And so she's, manages my email, my calendar, all of those things, and helps really make sure the right things are getting in the right spots.
Excellent, man. Take that advice right there. It's great stuff. Listen, this has been a great interview. Again, I have a lot of respect for what you're doing day in and day out. I love that you're being innovative. I love your layering and technology. I love that you are doing the podcast to spread the wealth, so to speak, and the knowledge. But for entrepreneurs listening right now who could be insurance business or just in any business whatsoever, what advice would you give them about innovating, staying adaptable, driving growth? Because we know it's a jungle, right? We know there's a lot of parts moving here. There's a lot of things around every corner. What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think being innovative, again, is a skill set that you can build, and identifying areas where you can improve in a certain area. But one of the things I love to do and have tried to train myself to do is really in any interaction, no matter where you're at, how much you think it's inapplicable to your business, is notice when you get a great experience, or notice when you really enjoyed something, or you thought that interaction went really well, and just think how could I apply that to our business? I've been in restaurants where I'm like, whoa, that's cool. And I'm like, they greeted us, or they knew my name when I walked in, or, whatever. Little things that then you can kind of take and say, and just ask yourself, I wonder if I could apply that to my business. Most, you can't, or you don't think, but it kind of helps you think about various different ways that you could innovate and use things that other industries have done well and improve in your business, and not be stuck in this is the way that insurance agencies have always operated. And so I think that's a big piece, is kind of training your mind to think in that way and kind of notice those things, so that you can understand how you could apply it.
It's great advice, man. Great advice. Way to close it up. You just wrapped that thing up with a bow. Perfect.
There we go.
There we go. Listen, Elliot, I want to thank you for being on this show. You've been a great guest, great information. This guy is a true entrepreneur, and he's innovative. He's staying on edge. He's not only had a great experience in the past, but he's really got a great experience moving forward. Where can people reach out to you if they have any questions whatsoever?
Yeah. Best spot is find me on LinkedIn, Elliot Bassett, or Instagram. I'm on Instagram a decent amount interacting with people. So that's at Elliot.Bassett. But shoot me a message. We've even got some free resources for people that we've used in the past around selling and building systems and whatnot. So hit me up and I'd love to chat.
Yeah. Great, man. Great. Excellent. Well, again, man, thanks for being here. It's been a great show. As always, everybody, wealth, health, success to all of you out there, and go get a win today. Make sure you're covered by your insurance as well, right? Make sure you not too much and not too little, but go get a win, everybody out there. And we'll see you next time. And make sure just share this show with one person. We really appreciate all the support and the feedback we've been getting, but just share it with one person, and we appreciate it. So we'll see you next time. Thanks again.
Thanks, David.
Unfinished Business Podcast Show with your host, David Sliman.